You can't hear me. Now you can hear me. Hello, Internet. Welcome, everybody, to the stream today. My name is SenseiSuplex, and today we have an amazing set of individuals for an amazing set of content. We have that of the Dungeon Masters podcast, featuring that of the Rolling Together stream team. So thank you guys for tuning in and joining us today. We have multiple individuals from the likes of RolltogetherRPG, ChasingTalesRPG, Carnisideshow, and also CheckDsOut. Wonderful individuals that you guys actually recommended to me. So that being said, we're going to be trying to bring that of your D&D games to the next level. But enough about me. You've probably seen my face for the past like 8 hours and probably are sick of it. Let's go ahead over to all of our panelists and guests for today. And make sure to give them also lots of love and support and cheer them on. This is going to be freaking awesome. Super excited. All right, that said, let's go on over. So make sure I got the right overlay. Hopefully everything works. We're gonna try. It kind of worked out somewhat. I knew it was gonna be a little bit. Wonky, but we could fix that up just in no time. Let's go unmute ourselves.
He's doing his intro.
Hello, everybody. I knew it was like the overlay's gonna look a little weird, but how's it going, everybody?
Yeah, good.
Hello.
Heck yeah. I will be fixing the overlay in the background, but that being said, again, wonderful individuals who decided to be on the panel today. That said, we're going to be trying to bring that of your D&D games to the next level and try to enhance them and make sure you guys are just having the most fun possible. That said, we're going to go into real quick a little bit of introductions. I guess for myself, what we can do, I can do a little quick introduction, but my name is SenseiSuplex, and essentially I am a professional dungeon master, and I try to bring that of your games to the next level, as I mentioned before. I essentially run a giant persistent universe known as Project Aurora, where several dozen dungeon masters basically all sort of run their games in this same universe, so they can affect each other in big or small ways. Everybody in the community gets involved and can leave their mark, so hey, if you ever feel interested in that, then hey, you can always check it out over and join the Discord. That being said, you can see any of the sort of Twitch links and all that stuff that you need. And yeah, that said, let's go over.
I think I Twitch things are wrong.
Oh, is it? No, it changed it. No, it changed it to the Players Podcast. Don't worry, I'll fix it on my end. God dang it. It was something. Yeah, it was going to be something, but yeah, it's all good. Yeah, we know, we all DM on Twitch. It's bound to happen, right? That said, well, while I'm fixing all of that stuff, you guys, does anybody want to introduce themselves first and also let everybody know where we can find you?
I'm in the top left. I feel like I should go first.
If not, I can roll a dice. That is a thing or common theme where we just roll a dice for introductions.
We rolled the ice here. Whoa.
Whoa. Oh, and there goes a D4, and there's a caltrop on the ground. Oh god.
I'll go. Hi,
Go for
I'm Prue, or I'm Proopypants everywhere on the internet. I do loads of UK and Europe tabletop role-playing game, community organising, and charity events. But mostly I'm over on Chasing Tales, playing and running games of Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games. Chasing Tales is part of the same stream team we all stream together in. And yeah, I run games, I like playing in games, I like games.
Heck yeah. That said, who is next?
Okay. I'm Chris, Evil Chris, or Carney, or whatever you want to call me. From Carnisideshow, we also do lots of actual plays. We also have a Twitch plays and a couple of D&D style interviews with some IRL life check, skill checks, and some other fun stuff like that.
Heck yeah. That said, and who is next?
I'll go. I'm Chris. I'm the head of production at Roll Together. We do 2 D&D actual play streams a week and 1 D&D talk show a week. Yeah, Mondays and Tuesday evenings in UK times. And we stream a bunch of different campaigns. We're about to start our latest collaboration with the mobile game Warriors of Waterdeep, where we run an actual play based on their game.
Awesome. So, that being said, so you, as I kind of mentioned before, like when we were talking before the stream began, Everyone
Hey,
sounds
what
a little
about
bit.
me?
What about roleplay?
Oh wait, God, I don't know why. I'm so sorry. Actually, here, you get an inspiration point, Macca. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did that.
I'm really forgettable, so it's totally fine.
No,
Um,
no, it's not
say
that.
that.
It's
Yeah,
not
we
that.
will accept
I
it.
read
We do.
chat, and for some reason, freaking it threw me for a loop. Go ahead, or
So
please.
I'm Macca the DM from CheckDsOut. We're an actual play D&D 5e stream that does Mondays and Tuesdays 9 p.m. UK time on twitch.tv/CheckDsOut. And very soon we're going to be doing a Friday stream that is cosmic horror, kind of Lovecraftian, but we want to move away from the Lovecraft name because of obvious reasons. And we're going to be doing Thursdays as well that will do other TTRPGs that are not D&D 5e. So that's us.
That being said, thank you. Yeah, as Chaotic and Writer said, it's been 8.5 hours on stream. We're all good.
Yep.
Come on, let me make a couple of mistakes or whatever. But as I was saying before, so we talked a little bit about this briefly, just to like sort of set up everything. So I've only been being a DM for that of the likes of 3-ish years. For a while, and though I'm a professional DM, we wanted to get a bunch of perspectives from DMs from all around and from different perspectives and walks of life to basically see exactly what they or sort of do to kind of enhance their games. And that being said, so what the question that I have for you guys, so what made you actually kind of get into D&D and maybe even take on the sort of mantle for the Dungeon Master and that sort of role?
Necessity?
Yep. Same for me.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's a
it's
common
kind
story.
of I was in a group. I'd only played D&D twice, and I was with a group of friends at work, and this guy is into like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer and D&D, and he was like, "You must play with us." And so we finally said, "Go on, then we'll play." And we loved it straight away. Me and my friends, none of us had played D&D before, apart from this one guy.
Yeah.
And then after 2 weeks, he said, "Yeah, I'm bored of this now. I'm going to move to something else." But because we all wanted to still play, my friends all looked at me and said, "Hey, would you do the DMing?" And that's kind of been me for the last 2 years. I've never really learnt the rules, but we just necessity. Here we are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, in my case, it was I was producing a show where we were playing D&D live in theatre, and I had already played quite a lot of home games, but mostly 3.5, and there'd been a big gap. And then we hired some DMs to DM a live show, and we needed to replace one of them. So I went, I've not DM'd in 10 years, I'll jump in, we'll see how it goes. And it just went really well. And then from there it developed.
Nice. What about you, Prue or Chris?
I got rustled into Dungeons and Dragons at university many moons ago now, and then I ended up not playing with that group because I did study abroad. I don't know. Everything kind of fell apart, and then I moved to Manchester and was like, oh, I really, really, really want to play D&D, but I've got nobody to play it with. Hey, housemates, I'm gonna run a game for you. And then, yeah, I slowly picked up lots of different friends along the way. My other hobby is clubbing, and there are a lot of people at nightclubs that want to play D&D, and I've met so many people at a bar where I'm like, hey, is that D22? You want to join my game? And they're like, yeah, please. And that's me. That's my DMing story.
That is awesome. Oh man, just walking up to people, hey, you want to play some D&D? Just got some dice.
You can clock them a mile off in the club. You're like, that's a nerd. That one over there, it's like my special talent. People go away to the bar, they go for a smoke break. I'm sat with one other person. They come back. I'll have got them talking about something, Warhammer, D&D. I will find their one nerdy thing that they don't tell anybody about, and I will make them tell me.
You literally meet people in a tavern and then game starting in a tavern.
Yeah.
See? Yes. I'm living the real life D&D fantasy.
Oh man. I said, Carney, bring us home.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit different. I don't know. I've always been into kind of like games and stuff. We used to run like events over here in Taiwan, and I never thought I would ever get into D&D ever in my life. I had friends that did it in like high school and throughout, and I was just like, yeah, you're my friends, but look, we gotta have some like some space, because when you get into that zone of like Magic the Gathering, kind of like D&D, back in the day at least, it was like, yeah, you're cool, but I don't want to hang out with you that way. And like, I don't know what it was over here somewhere. We started playing more role playing games, not D&D, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna check this out. And like many people, started watching Critical Role, and then I realized what it could be, and I was just like, oh, this doesn't have to be like min-maxing like stats and all that stuff. Like it could just be telling a really good story. And then like I'm over in Taiwan, a little bit isolated, so like there's not a lot of people doing it here. So I was like, I gotta pick up the mantle and just like go for it. And I fell freaking in love like right away. Just amazing.
Yeah, you're one of the biggest streaming groups in Asia for D&D now as well, like really quickly.
Getting there. We got some, yeah, we got some other people going. Really cool group of people over here in Australia and Taiwan, Japan.
That is awesome. I guess probably my D&D story, and this is kind of like, I mentioned this earlier on stream, but it was basically along the lines of, all right, I was like, hey, I'm never gonna play D&D. I don't want to play a nerd game. I'm not a nerd. Why would I ever want to do that? As I watch anime and all this other stuff, I'm not a nerd. I won't ever do that. And eventually I'm over at university and all that stuff, and my friends are like, hey, yo, Key, you want to play some D&D? Nah, that's stupid, but I might watch. Yeah, I'll watch. Yeah, we'll do that. So I end up going over there, talking to the Dungeon Master. They're going through just simple character creation, and the Dungeon Master just says, hey, so yeah, you guys can just kind of play whatever you want, be whoever you want to be, create whatever sort of thing, and all these sort of amazing stories. And I'm like, wait, so you're telling me I can just be like, I don't know, crazy sort of Viking barbarian or whatever, or I can be just straight up Link from Legend of Zelda or anything like that? And he's like, yeah. At that moment right there, I can't make this up. I'm like, all right, I sit at the table. All right, I want to make a character. Let's do this. Let's rock and roll. And I fell in love with D&D right there. Oh, man.
Exactly the same for me.
Great thing that the 5th edition boom has brought in is this idea, taking away the whole it's nerds sat at a cafeteria table grognarding hard. Like, the fact that gaming is now so opened, and it's not everyone who you would expect gaming, it's a completely wide plethora of people, is kind of what makes it so awesome now, is that it feels like a more expansive community than it ever was, which, as someone who started off a long time ago, there was that stigma, there was that vibe, definitely.
Yeah. That said, I guess the way how I got into being a DM, it was more so I was addicted to D&D after getting that first player high of like, oh man, we're on 4th session. I don't want to wait till Wednesday. I want to play D&D now. So forget it. I'll freaking DM. You know what? I'll try this. And it went terrible, but I had a great time. Oh man. That said, so I guess we can get started with like trying to enhance that of everybody's sort of D&D games. So there's always that sort of one thing of that one sort of tip that like what would be one tip you would probably give to yourself like when you were sort of a new dungeon master or game master and you're trying to get the hold of the ropes? What if you would have given yourself, or just I guess anybody in general trying to get started,
I would tell myself to know the whole plot before you expose players to a story. My first time DMing, I was like, this is cool, I'll just let this happen. It went nowhere, the plot went nowhere, there were no story beats. Like, lots of my other advice would come from a point of like taking care of players and being kind and making sure everybody's happy. But at its base, it's a storytelling game, and if you have no idea what your story is, you're gonna flounder after a couple sessions. Not necessarily true, you might be the best improv storyteller in the world, you might be an amazing improv comic, and if that is your style of DMing, then lean into that. But definitely for me, oh no, I did not write down a full story, I didn't even write bullet points, it's terrible.
Well, I actually have the exact opposite view to that. So I started off my DMing with a full plan, full story and everything, and it basically failed completely because it rested on my storytelling rather than the group storytelling, right? So my advice would be, and again, there's no right or wrong way to play D&D, and what's right for your group and yourself is right, and then that might not be right for everyone else, right? What I did that I've found to have more success is I've had the players write their backstories, and then I write the story around the characters' backstories, and I kind of don't plan anything really. I just improv with them, and we kind of ping each other's pong, right? So my advice would be just vibe with your players and don't necessarily have a plot point that you want them to go down, because that might not be where they want to go.
Yeah. See, the thing is, my DMing style completely well, this is my current sort of thing. My DMing style completely fails if they go so far off the mark, because you maybe have seen, I use a lot of battle maps. Like, everything you do, it'll have a battle map. If they go that far off the mark and I ain't got a battle map, well, all right, guys, looks like we're going to be wrapping up a little early today or something stupid like that. Granted, that doesn't really happen too much, but that's actually pretty interesting. Who is next for their number one probably tip as a new dungeon master?
Come on, Chris.
Me? I don't know. I would say I'm kind of right in the middle of those two. I love lore. So I love just being immersed. That's kind of my style. So I like players that are immersed. So, like, full on role play all the time, or just love exploring the world. So I do have those like places, and I do have a story, but at the same time I kind of had the kind of like both experiences that these two had. Kind of like I had the first campaign with a huge story and huge stuff to explore, but I had new players, so they were just kind of like, so what do we do? And I'm like, well, follow the main plot line or do whatever you want. And they're just like, uh don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, okay. So now it's like more like if the players are kind of floundering, like that happened, I do push them along. I'm like, okay, this is what needs to be done right now, or have like helpful NPCs jump in to like push them around. But other than that, like I love being in just a huge open world.
Yeah. I think my number one tip would probably be along the lines of, because I guess when I was first starting DMing, I was just like, okay, I gotta know all the rules, I gotta figure all this stuff out, because it's a rule book. It's not a rule book, it's a guide, but like all that sort of stuff. And what I ended up forgetting was, I think if I could do it a little bit over again, instead of looking towards rules, just focus on making the game as fun as possible for literally everybody at the table. Don't worry about the rules. Don't worry about, oh, this is how armor class is calculated. Forget all that stuff. Just, hey, if you're having a good time, doesn't freaking matter. It doesn't matter at all. So that would probably be something as a new dungeon master. If you're sort of struggling, look to see what your players like and what they enjoy, and kind of just make sure to add all that sort of stuff to their games as much as you possibly can.
It's that question of the role of the DM, because a lot of books write a lot of stuff and a lot of people say a lot of things about it, but often it falls down to, do you want to be a referee? Which a lot of DMing can fall into, this idea of, am I adjudicating the rules as other people want to play the game, or am I empowering everyone at the table to do their best, coolest thing? Like, my favorite thing ever is when a player goes, can I do this? Because the response will invariably be, yes, there's a penalty, or this is not going to be easy, or you got to make a couple of rolls. But if someone has a really cool idea and they want to do it, just say yes. Because the more you do that, the more they'll go, this is a world I can do anything in, and then they will keep doing it forever.
For anyone that's watching, by the way, that hasn't seen Chris and Roll Together, my DMing improved by watching Chris. So just there's that.
I
know I do this every time, but I have to say it.
Oh man, that's amazing. I'm actually curious. Are you guys more of the rule of cool sort of DMs? Do you know what I mean? Are you guys sort of that department, or I forget the opposite sort of thing? And it's not neither. I want to sort of preface. Neither is sort of bad. There's multiple freaking dozens and dozens of DMing styles and all that stuff. The best DMing style is the one for you, yourself, and your group, and all that, right?
That's true.
I find myself odd because in a lot of the community, a lot of people like just improv it, just wing it, and I'm very rules moderate. I like there to be the structure only because I try and be super careful about players not stepping in each other's shadows. I try really hard to spotlight every player at least once a session, or if one player gets loads of spotlighting. And if you don't know what I mean by spotlighting, if you're like a newer DM, it's where like, one character is controlling the arc, or you're exploring their backstory in particular. I try and make sure that spotlight is shared between everyone, and so I try and be really rules moderate, because then a min-maxer can play alongside a heavy role player, and they can like coexist. And so to me, having the rules is really important, because then I can make sure I'm doling out the right stuff for the right people, and there's not one person who every combat is like, I'm gonna be the best, I'm gonna be the best, I'm gonna be the best. And so that's why I end up being really rules moderate, but love rule of cool. Like, if someone in the middle of combat is like, I want to do this really weird, messed up thing, I'm like, I love you, Lil Bean. Please go ahead, do your weird, messed up thing.
It's that dichotomy between rules as written, like this sort of elaborate, complicated war game, which D&D, if you break it down, is. Then there's also rules as intended. There's this idea of where you're trying to speed through things and allow things to happen quickly. Like, famously, D&D's chase mechanics are terrible. Because they are. It's not a game designed for chase. It's a game designed for stand still on this 5-foot square. It doesn't go quite as far as Pathfinder, but, you know, D&D is very much a battle map Warhammer-style game, which you can handwave. And it's glorious when you can handwave it, but also some people's abilities rely on 5-foot increments. So Prue's right. There's that balance between, I want to leap off the cliff and jump onto the Kraken and tear a sword down its midriff as I fall down. Sure, I'm just going to roll some falling damage. Like, it's always useful to have a little bit of rules add back in as a way of structuring the world, because there's nothing worse than a player goes, can I do this? You say yes, and everyone goes, what are the rules? I don't know what the structure of this is. Is it just whoever says the coolest thing wins? Because you don't want that either. You want there to be some balance.
Yeah, generally, with my crew, we have a rule, not a rule, but like a saying, which is RP over OP. Yeah. So I often reward people for trying to do cool stuff. And don't get me wrong, if one of my guys, and there is one person that tries to push it too far every time, if they say, can I try and fly? And it's like, do you have the ability to fly? No. Okay, that's, even if you roll a nat 20, you're going to jump really, really high, but you're not going to fly. So there are boundaries, I suppose, that the rules would sit within, and I kind of have it as, is that realistic for your character to do? But really, I don't like there to be that pause in combat or in the social interaction where they go, oh, let me think about, can I do this, or can I ask the DM? I want them just to be their character, right, and be in their character's mind. And I think it really depends what kind of group you have, because some groups really, really need the rules because they're just those types of players, and some groups are really improv heavy and kind of want that freedom. So depending on what your group is, I think there's an element of change, and I think as long as everyone understands at session 0 what your style is as a DM and what the group wants, then happy days.
100%. That being said, if anybody or if no one had anything else to add to that, we actually did get a question. We did get a question from chat earlier. Chaotic and Writer and N Super Tired. They were asking, are there any homebrew mechanics that you all have implemented into your games that you and your players absolutely love? Let's hear about this. Any homebrew mechanics from you guys?
Definitely from my end, like, actually it kind of goes from the last question you guys just talked about, because I wanted to jump in, but I wanted to say with homebrew stuff, like, for the rules, that there are specific rules. I bring in a lot of the older edition rules, especially 4E, which got a bad rap, but actually like the skill challenges, the sliding skill challenges are so useful. They're so useful, instead of just being like a pass fail, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, this happens, but also this happens too. And also bringing those kind of rules in from Powered by the Apocalypse games and Savage World and stuff like that. Like, so helpful to have like other outcomes besides like, okay, well, you didn't hit, or something like that.
Yeah. In my games, we have a homebrew mechanic which is just based around the world itself. So I had like, magic's really chaotic in my world, right? And every single living being has magic inside it. That's kind of like the life essence or whatever. And when they die, that gets released and it can behave chaotically and cause storms and so on if it's collected in that. And but then if a small amount remains inside a being, they come back as zombies called Craven, because they crave magic and they try and get it from people and stuff. And so to sort of fit within that world, any magic user, if they're near a dead person or someone that's dying and the magic is being released, they can kind of draw that magic in and regain a spell slot from doing that. And that kind of worked really well in that game, because there was only a couple of people that were spellcasters and stuff, and it didn't really change the game that much. But likewise, if they were not spellcasters, they could have like a gauntlet that would draw in the magic and form it into a crystal that would do some magical effect. And it was a really sort of out there homebrew idea, and I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to go, but it seemed to work really well, and it kind of negated the need to keep stopping every 5 minutes for a short rest and a long rest and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that's true. Anybody else?
I tend to keep relatively homebrew light in like big rules changes and stuff like that, mostly because from my perspective, and other DMs on the channel do differ, we don't have like a cohesive we all work this way policy. It's very much DMs get to choose how they DM.
Yeah.
I like keeping rules relatively as as intended, as writ. If you know how that spell works, you know how that spell works, because people like to see those spells, like to see those things that they know. So I like giving them that. I know if someone knows I'm playing a fighter and I'm this subclass, an audience member can go, I know what that means. Like I as an observer, I like that, and therefore I hope people who watch the channel like that too. Where homebrew starts to kick in is monsters. I tend to give monsters extra abilities because most monsters are dull. So the ability to add in, shove mechanics and disarming mechanics and things that make players think on their feet, I find is a very nice way of upgrading the game and playing with what it has on offer. I tend to use a lot of optional rules. A lot of stuff that Tash has brought in around socialization and stuff like that is very useful. My favorite one is in character creation. People who play with me know this. I tend to go very much along the line of max out a stat. Please do max out your combat stat, max out your to hit stat, or something where you want to be the best at it because you're a hero. Be the best at it, but have a stat below 10. Mm-hmm. Have something that you are god awful at, and roleplay the hell out of that, because that's the joy. If your character's low intelligence, make poor assumptions and act on them. If character's low wisdom, don't understand how things function, and again, make poor judgments. Low charisma, please tell bad jokes, say the wrong thing at the wrong time. Yes, be good at the game, play the game, have awesome characters do awesome things, but also have your flaw. Like, I'm very happy to, rolling for stats at the beginning of the game, I tend to go, roll until you get the thing that you want, and have one that's below 10. That's my favorite thing to play and to DM.
That is awesome.
If that counts as homebrew.
I'm playing an arcane archer right now, has a 20 dex and can do 80 damage in a turn, popping off arrows, and she has a 5 wisdom, and I roleplay it. I roleplay that she's extremely long-sighted, and that's why she fails all other wisdom checks. She can't do a medicine check because it's all blurry, and she doesn't know where anything is.
But see, that's fucking amazing, because you get to do anime-style awesome attacks and describe these amazing combat moves, but also you fall over. And it's good that you fall over, and it's a nice balance to have. It also means you have a saving throw that the monsters can target. Because we all know that players who play a lot will go, that monster's low on that, I'll hit them with that spell. The monster should be able to do the same thing to you. Look at that person tripping over their own feet. There's the low dex person, fireball that one. Like, it's... Because I can't think of a single hero that doesn't have a tragic flaw. And in D&D, it's very hard to pick what that could be, and a stat's a real nice way to start.
Before we move on real quick, on homebrewing monsters, I do something similar to make combat feel more fast-paced, and because combat can be a little bit sloggy in D&D.
Yeah.
And when it's let's say it's not a super storyline-based encounter, let's say it's just a fight they've got themselves into, or it's a fight because they want one, but they're going to win, right? Because normally, random encounters, they kind of always win. I tend to always win.
The players always win. They have to. That's the point of the game.
Even if they lose, they're going to win later anyways.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what I tend to do to make combat feel a bit more cinematic and description heavy is I lower the health of enemies and I raise the amount of damage they can do. So, if you get stabbed with a sword, you're not just going to go, oh, I'll just brush that off. You're going to get stabbed, right? So if you lower the health, the battle's over quicker. But if you raise the damage enemies can do, it makes every combat a threat in some way, even to just one player. And that kind of helps with us.
Yeah.
I do a different thing with my monsters, but I would probably implement what you just said, Mac. I really like that idea, because I usually drop an AC and up health so that everyone can get a hit in, because I feel really bad for that character who, for an RP decision, dumped one of their combat stats, and they can never get a hit in, and they feel like the player is satisfied, but I, as a DM, I'm like, I want you to at least stab it once. I want you to stab the troll
Yeah.
once, that's all. And so I usually drop AC and max out health so that everyone at least gets a hit and gets to feel cool. Because there's nothing worse than rocking up to the D&D session, rolling no one than a 10 every single combat turn and never hitting anything.
You should have
That's
saw
the
what
DM
happened.
rolls right there.
You should have saw what happened last time. That was literally the entire boss fight. Just no one could roll above a 10 to save their life.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad. I'm like, I know that sucks. I don't know what I can do to help out. So I don't know. Maybe adding like sort of something like that would definitely be able to help out for sure. Oh,
Watch
man.
the
Yeah, to
hell
jump-
out of it.
To jump kind of on that as well, like maybe going back to what my tip would be, because I never really gave a tip, but it would be like, for me, it would be just always have like a purpose to the encounter. For like, I try. It can't always be done, of course not. But like you were saying, like with random encounters and stuff, it can be really hard. But to give like a an alternative win condition, or you know what I mean, like having something else going on. It's not just because they're hungry and they want to eat you, because maybe they're after something. They've been sent by something to do something specific. So having the players be able to figure out what that is, or like get around, not just having to kill monsters for, you know. But again, that's like for me personally, I love combat, but like you said, it slogs on in D&D, and like it can kill the story so fast.
So I love it when the bard sometimes stops and goes, "Hey, wait, why are we even fighting?" And then the reason they're fighting in a bar, and they go, "Hey, I don't know, let's just start."
There's a whole section of Tasha's on persuading monsters to stop fighting. They literally baked it in now, and it's great. It's so useful
I have
because
not seen that.
the ability for a player to go, "Why are we doing this?" and for you to go, "Roll a persuasion check. Like, what do you want to say to them? How do you want to stop this?" Because you're right. Why are we doing this? And that empowering players again the opportunity for them to go, "I don't want to like smack my rapier against a carrion crawler for 3 rounds for no good reason. I want to cut off a finger and throw it into a pond." Great, good. This is good. This is good storytelling. Off we go. Like finding that sort of way through combat that gets a bit sloggy, or changing the conditions. Like combats, because D&D is often played on a map. I mean, I am spoiled by being theatre of the mind, having been for so long that I can only DM that way now. Because D&D is envisioned on a map of 5-foot squares, you go, well, I can't make combat change now. Break a mountain, make a bridge fall down, tidal wave. Like it doesn't matter. Anything you can do to change the circumstances, to drive. We're now in stage 2 of the combat. We've all played Final Fantasy. We know what this looks like. Like the more you can bring that into the game, and the more you can go, we've been doing this for 3 rounds. Something has to change. The better, because it just changes the dialectic. Like, in a session of a game recently, we had a monster boss that was really powerful. I was playing this one, not DMing this one, and we went, what are we going to do? And there was a ravine nearby, so we spent 3 combat rounds edging it towards a ravine for the wizard to cast Grease and then push him. And it worked. But it took an hour of gameplay to get to that point, but it wasn't an hour of I hit it, nothing happens. It was an hour of go over there, kite them over there, okay, and trying to work out all of those little details. And it is more interesting combat that way. I think combat to slog it out sometimes is fun if it's like a big war thing, but more often than not, combat to encourage people to do stuff. As Chris was saying, combat should have purpose. That's very true.
That's
If I can, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I didn't give any homebrew tips yet, and I run 2-hour D&D sessions, and I make my combat really fast, because if you make it 2 hours, you force your players to do it. And what you do is you split the session into 10-minute windows. When I first started, that's what I did, and now I've got so used to the technique that I can just kind of keep an eye on the time and keep an eye on what they're doing. And I warn my players that's what we were doing, because I had like 2 players that like concentrating for 3 hours is killing me. I can't do it. I get so tired. And honestly, I quite enjoy having these little short things where the hobby isn't sucking up my whole evening, because I've got players that have tons of other stuff they need to do and lots of other things going on in their life. So I like not feeling like I'm keeping them away from the other things. And if you force yourself to like window your games, you can make combat go so much faster, but it's a case of having that conversation with your players out of character. And I really enjoy it, because then you get really like flying by the seat of their pants playing. If they haven't prepped on their go, I'm like, pick something off your spell list, just cast it, see what happens, do it. What sounds cool? Try it, done. Your go's over, we'll resolve it next time. And like, it's interesting because it very much gives that sense of urgency in battle where you realize you've made a mistake. You're like, oh, I should have healed that person. but I didn't. I hit the monster. I'll run over and do that next time. And it really, like, I don't know, it added lots of fun for me to start challenging myself to run these 2-hour sessions. And I can recommend just giving it a go if you're, like, relatively confident with your DMing. Just hit up some friends and be like, I'm going to run a 2-hour session, see how much we can fit in. And it really changed my attitude to combat. Yeah. I also have some other homebrew rules if you want to know them, just the simple ones. They're the classics. If you play D&D and you do a full action for someone to drink a potion, don't do it. Make it bonus action. Everyone makes it a bonus action. Make it bonus action.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
And also, max damage on a crit's first set of dice is the best and my favourite. There's nothing worse than rolling a crit and rolling all ones on the dice. So you make the first set of dice just max. You don't roll it. You just write what the maximum will be, and then you add that to the second set, which you roll on top. Because then you're guaranteed to get higher than what you could have gotten. And if someone in your party is a paladin and they're smiting an undead and they roll a crit, they are going to have the best time. They're going to love it. Those are two that I use.
Just saying.
You're telling me, wait, I'm doing it wrong apparently. I remember the first time I was DMing, well, like relatively, and I will never forget this story. I just used to do for crits, it would just be double damage no matter what, just whatever you roll, double it, boom. And my paladin, who's level 2 by the way, he gets his first divine smite off and it's a crit. Rolls 25 damage total. Alright, double it, 50 damage, instantly one-shots the entire boss monster. I'm like, huh, that was sick. But I don't think that's how it's supposed to go, but I'm not going to tell him otherwise. Screw it, whatever, he's got it. You know?
That's just paladins, mate. You have to get used to it. The player who plays the paladin is always going to be the one going, I'm going to kill it. And you go, you are. Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
How?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, I guess we can go over to this sort of thing. This is a topic that's kind of brought up every now and again, and I know a lot of dungeon masters. I definitely have a different take on it, but a lot of dungeon masters or even new ones, they sort of try to focus on world building. So I guess as a dungeon master in general, or even you can answer from a new DM's perspective, whichever you so choose. Or do you have any tips for like world building and kind of just to help out people?
Can I go first, or got one to jump in?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
You need to know some basic stuff about your world, stuff like languages, species interaction, intermingling of species, always intermingling of species. No, monocultures don't exist. But try and reach a point where you feel comfortable DMing a casual scenario in a village, in a city, and then you've got the basics. From that point on, don't think about the players will provide I need a church of blah so I can worship blah. Fine, they'll provide all of that. You can add some flavor in if you want, but you don't need to. Think about the things that no one thinks about. Hairstyles, accents, the way things smell. The more you can DM senses that aren't visual, the more immersed people will be. That's just a brain trick. But the more you can add details in that are the kind of thing that you would notice when traveling to somewhere new that aren't the obvious one. Like, I had one campaign recently where I spent quite a lot of time describing rain. There was an awful lot of different, like, the weather was always bad and it was always rainfall and so on. And it became an ongoing joke that I now still reference at the top of the show saying I DM the rain. Because it made such a stylistic difference to how everyone approached and appreciated the world and how it affected them. The more you can add in tidbits like that, is there a famous actor? Do people quote this person in the street or dress up like them? Do you want to have do you keep referencing someone? Like, I consistently reference certain actors and performances and movies and stuff. Do you want to have an in-world what that is? Is it puppetry in your world? Like, how does that look? The more you can flesh out the stuff that doesn't matter at all, the more people will go, it feels lived in.
100%.
I completely agree. One thing I really like to do, a regional food and a drink. Every country in the world has a food and a drink they serve, and I hadn't thought about it. And then in a game, I asked my DM, Andrew, "Oh, what do they sell here?" And I was just like, "I don't know anything." I asked him a question about cheese, and he was like, "I don't know anything about cheese, Prudence." And I was like, I need to be a DM who knows about cheese. And I was like, from now on, when I world build, I'm going to make sure I, at least in the back of my mind, have at least an improvised idea. I won't plan it for everywhere, but if they rock up somewhere, I'm like, what's the local wine? I'll be like, they make wine out of black currants here, but it's weirdly coloured orange. Enjoy it. And then that's a little quirk for them to remember, and I really like the same with puppet shows, famous creatives. I think people don't put famous creatives enough in like D&D fantasy worlds, but you can have a famous painter from your region. Every country has a famous painter that everybody can name from who's from that country, and we forget to put in like that kind of day-to-day life stuff that's not going to affect the hero's adventure necessarily. And I really like sprinkling that stuff in world building too. My other thing for world building is I've got a geophysics degree. Get one of those, really helps. I know what rocks go where. I know how volcanoes form. I know when your river is wrong, and I can be like, don't worry, your tributaries are going the wrong way, but I can fix that for you. Or you can just say it's magic. One
It's
of the
magic.
two.
That's magic.
It. It's magic. Geology's wrong. You're like, it's magic. Don't matter. Don't worry about it, kids.
Or my favorite, the gods did it somehow.
Yep. Hang on. I don't mean to interrupt anyone, but cheese. Cheese is such a good one because cheese is smelly, cheese is aromatic, cheese evokes responses, either disgust or love. And I'm going to throw in an example from a recent home game because it works so well. I threw in that this underground species of very white-skinned elves, because if you live underground, your skin would go lighter. It doesn't matter. But yeah, they had a special mushroom cheese that they got by extracting out of mushrooms, and the players just went, "What is this mushroom cheese?" And they got so excited about the mushroom cheese that I made it a sort of slightly statted item that. It works like a good berry, as in if you eat it while underground, you don't have to eat as much, but it smells really strong, so your chance of being seen by monsters is higher. And they just latched onto it, this concept of this cheese, and suddenly I was going like, there's a whole cheese currency, it gets traded because it's worth more than gold. It became a whole thing because I threw in something random and a player went, want it, and therefore it became a thing.
Yeah. Cheese is the common theme for DMs because I had a whole story arc about cheese in one of my offline games too. I won't go into that detail, but it's just strange how it happened. But for the world building for me, I'm very similar to Chris and Prue actually. Whereas I will think about the little things rather than building out this whole extravagant world and naming every single city and town and so on. I have the little things like what type of taverns they have, what sort of ales they sell or whatever. And I often have animal species. I love having like animal kin in the games. But in my world building, the part of D&D that I find the most tedious is travel. And even Tolkien said, traveling back from a place is the worst bit, so you just skip it. So I always have a mechanic in my games to instantly travel from place to place. And sometimes it's fine to do like a little travel through a forest or a travel through a mine or whatever. But if you want the players to get somewhere, or if they really want to get somewhere, having like half a session wasted with you walk to here, you sleep, you walk to here, you sleep. So I always have like portals or some ways or some portable little like a contract they can sign and it just takes them to a place. So in my world building always have that, and for some reason always a floating continent too. I just I love the concept.
Always.
You gotta have one.
It's gotta happen.
Yeah.
Carney, what about you?
I mean, besides what these guys already said, honestly, I would say just also, you don't have to reinvent the wheel on everything. Like, there's so much information out there already. And yeah, you can have your world and the culture and everything like that, which is great. But also, you don't have to, make every single detail. There's lots of stuff, good content already out there. And for me, like, I tend to play in the Forgotten Realms, just because if I want a city, I can plant it in with a strange culture, or if I want another world or something, I can do that. But there's already so much good lore and like content and history too, which you can draw off of and like put in little, what are those called? No, went blank. But like things that people are going to pick up on and be like, oh yeah, I know that, I can recognize that. And I think that's really cool. And by the way, speaking of cheese, I just learned, I can't believe I've never heard of this Casumarzu from Italy. Have you guys heard of this? I just learned of this last night. And it's like, it's made with maggots to help ferment.
Yeah.
Oh, and now I got to put this in D&D because it is just
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
gross,
yeah,
but
you can
also
choose like a grenade
amazing.
that explodes with maggots. Yeah, I can see that. That's
I have some advice real quick for world building, right? World
Go for
building
it.
or naming stuff.
Mm.
A lot of the time, if you have names that are longer than 3 syllables, the players will just not remember that, right? So
Yeah.
in my games, I always have 2 or 3 syllables for everything. So like taverns, people's names, places, everything has 2 or 3 syllables maximum. And
One thing, can I add on to that? I don't mean to cut you
if
off.
it's good, but if it's not super serious as well, having a funny name, they will remember.
Also, one thing, pro DM tip, make sure when you're writing all this stuff out, make sure to say your names out loud beforehand, because,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
the worst thing or whatever, where someone
Your
just...
players will butcher your names. It will just happen. They will. They're going to accept it.
Well,
Yeah.
also, like a place name that's overly complicated just would not survive the annals of time. People would just make it shorter. I am someone who is very in this camp. Like, I'm on the extreme end of the, like, making place names simple. All my places are called, like, Midtown, because it's a town between 2 things. And I have a place called Rivermeet, because 2 rivers meet there. I am
Places are
very
named.
simple.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
places are named. The number of British towns called basically in either Greek or Celtic or in any of the ancient languages mean by the river is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because that's how towns are named in the world. There's nothing wrong with going, what's this town called? New Town. Because
Yeah.
it's new. Chris said made a really good point to her, which is don't reinvent the wheel. I'd go one step further. Wholesale nick shit that you like.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to. What does it matter? It's not like we're pretending. No, it's like any DM is pretending. I made this entire world entirely by myself with no influence. Of course you have influences, you fool. The question is how much of it you steal. And it's fine to.
My big homebrew world is a flat disc that is the back of a flying turtle that's flying through space. Because Terry Pratchett is amazing and I love him. And
There you go.
I want to
love it.
commemorate his wonderful storytelling with what I do. And cool, good for me. I love my turtle. It's great.
I've stolen
Yeah.
whole storylines from the TV show Lost because my players told me they don't like Lost, and I was like, I bet you haven't even watched it. So I just took a storyline, and they were like, "This is amazing! You've written a really good thing." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I got some news for you."
I remember I went to a DM's panel like at a convention a long time ago. There was the number one tip was like, all right, you guys ain't got to be creative. Just look at a media that your players don't know about and just yoink it. Just take it.
Yeah.
Change little things, but they won't know. Keep on going from
Also,
there.
they won't recognize it. If
Yeah.
you take something that you like, and also I don't know if anyone else is like this, but I find this: if I play something, read something, watch something, whatever, and I find myself affected by it in whatever way, either like hating a character, loving a character, whatever, it sticks.
Yeah.
And I will invariably use it somewhere in a similar but not the same way because I like it. And that's how every creative everywhere works, I think. I mean, I don't want to sound too like overly reductive, but I've not met a single writer, actor, director who doesn't go, well, I saw this thing someone else did and it really hit me, so I took it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole 4-part campaign because I heard a song.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. Oh,
I was
man.
playing Assassin's Creed because I was playing Siege of Paris really late last night because a storyline towards the middle of the story just really hit me. I couldn't put it down, and now it's mine, and that's fine. I'm going to use it because of course I'm going to use it. I love it, and that will be different for everyone else.
I wanted to go back to reinventing the wheel again, but on a different tack. And it is that if you have the DMG, do flick it open and have a little look, the Dungeon Master's Guide, because they have things, like they have little paragraph descriptions of different political systems and stuff. And just basically look for things in the real world that aren't just what your town or country does, and grab them and put them in to create a sense of culture. And then I will do my I am a queer femme in the chat thing of like, oh, please put 50% of your NPCs not male. People don't intend to do it, they just don't, but they just very often this is a scene dominated by blokes, and very often a bloke will rock up and all his NPCs will be blokes. The bartender will be a lad, the town keeper will be a lad, there'll be a bloke adventurer who you can hire. I'm like, just add a few women in, add a few queers in, add a couple different skin tones, just, without doing stereotypes is the big one. Do it with complete joy and kindness in your heart. But like, as someone who has sat at tables where like every NPC has been a man, I've been like, where are the girls in this world? I want to say hi to another girl, please. So just remember that the people at your table might not have the same like life experience as you, and will expect different NPCs, political systems, languages, countries, cultures to exist. And so you can pepper them in. You can just grab them and pepper them in. As long as you're doing it respectfully, you're fine.
Yeah.
I go one step further on the not on the trans train. It's also risk it. I know that there will be a lot of people out there saying you don't want to offend trans people, or you don't want to do something that someone will go, I don't want that in my game. If you don't try and put characters in and get it wrong, you will never learn. And I know that's a difficult one because you're offending people. You need, if you want to try and play outside of a gender critical environment where men are all knights and women all stay at home, you need to be looking at different gender roles and playing around with it. And if you need to start with a stereotype, my God, please do. Start somewhere, I don't care where. But I don't want to play in games where I don't see myself. That's always been a thing that's been important to me. Mm-hmm. And that is a tough call. How often do you find assigned male at birth trans people in streams? Not often.
Yeah, and, but I did. Sorry to interrupt there, but I actually did my own talk show, not trying to promote my own thing or whatever. But it had 3 people that were people of color. So there was Lex is Korean American, Eli is indigenous Hawaiian, and Ramji is Southeast Asian. And when we were talking, we discovered that when they create NPCs, they create them as mirrors of themselves, and that's because they want to see themselves in games, and they don't often do that. So that's a really interesting point that I think that probably happens a lot.
Yeah. Actually, I think this might even be a little bit of a good transition. Prue, you actually mentioned this topic that you want to sort of go over, that being safety tools and kind of like how to sort of implement those into your D&D games. Actually, do you want to sort of go over a couple of things or tips that you sort of go about, or systems that you kind of use?
Yeah, sure, because over at Chasing Tales, I prodded everyone to, get our safety tools locked down and get it all tidied away. And then other people have watched our streams and been like, we've been implementing your safety tools, and it's really nice to see it all knock on, so I think it's worth a mention. And because you said the topic of today is to be like the best kind of DM you can be and create the best sense for your players, safety tools are something you use out of character to just make sure everyone's comfortable. And I would say the 3 best things are like a lines and veils, or some kind of document where you write down what you won't cover in game. You ask everyone before the game begins, is there stuff that will really upset you? Because some people don't want to see harm to children. Some people don't want to see homophobia. There's loads of stuff people don't want to see in games. But if you don't ask, you don't know. And then you can make a list, and everybody can check that list and respect each other. Easily done. The second one is to have a session 0, where you would make a list like this. Session 0s are great. Session 0s are where you all introduce each other. You talk about the tone of your game. You might rock up to a game store and someone's like, I'm creating a goofy improv, lighthearted, the Adventure Zone inspired, silly rules light game, and you'd gone there for like a grim, dark, heroic fantasy game. You don't want to sit at that table. That will stress you out. You will not enjoy fart jokes every like 20 minutes. And so
session 0 is the most important session, I think.
100%.
And doing 0.5s is what I call them. When the game feels like it's got a bit stressful and your players seem to be snipping each other, or you're snipping at your players, and you just catch yourself feeling caught in a cog, do a 0.5 where you just redo session 0. Works so well. Clears the air. Just, as always, with humans, communication is key, and you communicate. So session 0 is where you go over safety tools, you introduce your concepts, the world, and then you can go make characters together, and it's cute and it's fun. Yeah. And then the third one is things like X cards or pauses or whatever, and that is just if stuff comes up in game that really upsets people and stresses them out, they have a tool they can use without having to explain themselves. Yep. Your table is open, judgment free, and they can just be like, I need this to stop, without even having to say I need this to stop. They can just tap a card on the table or type something in a Roll20 chat window or whatever it is they need. So those are safety tools. And the reason I wanted to bring them up is they've honestly made me a better DM. They have made me feel safe at tables. I use safety tools quite a lot. I feel so loved and welcomed at tables where I have had to play X cards and they've all immediately stopped and they've been like, Prue, are you okay? And I just like want to melt inside. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Thanks for checking in, guys. And it's just really great. It just creates like such a safe, comfortable environment that then once you're doing the storytelling and the role playing, you don't have to be on edge. You don't have to be worried about anything. You know, everyone there is going to respect you and take care of you. And yeah, there we go. That's my spiel about safety tools. It's meant to be a discussion. I did just do a little monologue, so I will be quiet for a few moments.
No, I have nothing to add.
I haven't got anything to add. You did it perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, I need to reinforce, and I think it's a good thing to reinforce. We, as a production company, have a safety guideline check sheet that we wrote out based on exactly this conversation. We want everyone to be comfortable and happy, both playing and watching. There's also part of streaming. But then, in terms of safety tools, you'll find things that work best for your format. Like some people, if you pre-record pause cards, great, 'cause you can edit. Or if you're live streaming, certainly live tools like XChats and that sort of thing. Is that the TTRPG safety toolkit, Prue? Is that the one you
I was literally about, like, I was in my head, I'm like, do you guys have any other safety tools you'd like to share? And then you already did it.
Kiana Shaw and Lauren Bryant Monk's guide, which Prue has just shared, is amazing. It covers so much ground. They also use the Monty Cook list, I think, which is a really useful way of approaching conversations like this with people who've never thought about it before. Because people will go, what do you mean, what I not want in game? Like, killing people? We're playing D&D. You go, no, like, violence to kids. And they go, but wait. And then you go, okay, here's a list of things you might not want in game. And suddenly everyone goes, oh, that one. Yeah, I don't want that one. And there will always be one or two where they go, you know what, that's my line. And that is, as Lines and Veils are so useful to just give you as a DM the ability to go, I'm cutting that plot line. I'm cutting that bit of the world. I don't need it. And it reinforces that conversation.
Soft spoilers for Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Oh, no.
There is a town,
No.
Very soft, extremely soft. There is one town speaker who likes his drink, and he really likes his drink. And I had a player was like, I don't want alcoholism at the table. And Joe, I could immediately do, just not make that guy an alcoholic. Boom, done, easy.
Yeah, it's stuff like that.
Didn't take much, and yeah, it's fine. And now I know that player will be comfortable, and I'm not gonna upset them with stuff.
It's also it's important. I mean, you just said it, but this is an important one. You never know. And we all assume that everyone's fine because we all put on a front that we're all fine. Yeah. I'm not fine. I've never been fine. I have an anxiety disorder. That's a very tough one to deal with in a D&D context at times. But, by saying it at the top of a show, no one's turning to me and going, why are you suddenly being a bit narky and restrained? That's why, people. And it's stuff like that is great. And people may not want to share. The ability to do it privately is also incredibly useful. Recommend as a DM you be the buffer between the players and the other players if they don't want to share with everybody. That's your job. But yeah, player safety makes everyone have more fun. Bottom line.
So, Dead Aussie Gamer, or DAG, they actually dropped something interesting.
Hey.
They said, in a bid to play devil's advocate, what if you find yourself walking on eggshells trying to avoid potentially upsetting someone who perhaps had a lot of expectations towards what isn't acceptable? Where, if any, would you draw the line?
I would draw the line at not playing at the same table as them, basically. I know that sounds really harsh, but if you come to a table and someone has put in loads and loads and loads of lines that you can't match, you two shouldn't play together, and that's okay. That's fine, because there will be other people who can follow their expectations and meet their lines. Maybe people even with the same, triggers, if you want to call them that, or whatever, that they can play with, and then you can find a table that is a bit more like open and free. Not that it's not free, but also I've never had an experience where I felt stifled by someone else's request for safety tools. I have to say, I know you're playing devil's advocate, and it's good to have a discussion like that, but honestly, it's not actually very hard to follow these things so long as you're playing with a group of people you at least low-key trust. I know that can be a problem if you've rocked up to a game store and you're just sat at a table of strangers, but if it's a group you've even slightly curated, there's a good chance you all already like each other, you understand each other, you're not going to be in your way of each other with your safety tools. But if it gets to a point where you feel anxious, there's always talk to that player out of character, and if you and that player can't figure it out of character, you just can't play together, and it's sad, and it sucks, but it happens. It's happened to me before.
Yeah.
Oh, actually,
Also, hi, Mike.
Well, Carney, were you trying to say something? I didn't know if you were trying to say something earlier. Letting you get into the conversation.
No, I didn't really have much to add. I was just gonna say that because my games, I tend to play a lot of horror because I just love the genre, and I was just gonna say, besides the safety tools they already posted, just Van Richten's guide. I know it got a lot of flack from certain groups of people, but actually the safety tools are amazing, and you should definitely check those out as well for building a horror game. And you'd be surprised at what people actually find scary. Like, I'm like, okay, so dismemberment, like, nah, that's fine. I'm like, cockroaches? Oh, no cockroach, no insects in the game. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, there you go.
Yeah. Sometimes people's boundaries can change as time goes on as well, especially if you have long games, or something can come up that they didn't know was a trigger for them, and then that's where the X thing is so important, you know. So you can just go, okay, we didn't even know this was going to be a thing. But I think if it's something minor as well, like I got people in my game that are scared of spiders or have a really big phobia of needles and stuff, and if it's something really minor and I was planning to have that in, I'm just like, cool, I'll change it, you know.
I would, just to go back around to the devil's advocate question, like, I mean, if the problem is someone else's safety is inhibiting my creativity, there's a fundamental issue there that your creativity is more important than someone's safety. So if there is someone at the table who doesn't want something to go the same way as you change it, and if you don't change it, you shouldn't be playing together. There is a really simple bottom line there. Prue is absolutely correct. I think it's a worrying trend and a worrying idea to say that someone's safety, someone's respect, someone's identity, someone's protected characteristics, whatever, is inhibiting. Because if you find any of those factors inhibiting, then you probably shouldn't be interacting with a lot of people, because you really shouldn't be putting what you think on them.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's something I'm quite passionate about because it's such an issue.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is no D&D is better than bad D&D. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Also, so I guess we can... Oh, did anybody else have anything to add on to that topic? All right. So I think let's go over and let's sort of rewind the clock a little bit, and let's go back to kind of when we were just a bunch of people who was barely able to sort of understand how GMing and stuff was a thing. So let's go back to what was everybody's sort of, I guess it can be the biggest, but what was a mistake that you remember that you made as a dungeon master when you were kind of first learning, but how did you sort of overcome said mistake? I have a little bit of a story that I often use all the time. It's very, very simple. It's kind of funny and dumb, but it was when I was first running that little D&D session. I'm like, all right, everybody, let's get to play D&D. I want to play right now. Let's go. I'll try DMing all that other stuff. And I basically forgot. Okay. Lost Mines and Fell Delver. That's the game I'm playing. We fought Clark. He's an ogre, right? I think he's an ogre. He's not an ogre, by the way. So I'm like, okay, sure. We got this little group of 2 players and whatnot, my good friends. We'll just have them do a similar encounter. They're level 1. I throw an ogre at them. They instantly die in TPK. It's bad. So as you probably understood. So what I ended up doing after that, I didn't understand how balancing encounters were. I didn't know what CR was. So what I ended up doing after that was I decided to, okay, that I messed up there, but I'm going to try to really make it my mission to be as good as I possibly can at running combat. I'm going to try to sit down. I'm going to try to look up a whole bunch of guides, look on YouTube, look on articles, all this other stuff, just learning how to sort of make combat as fun as possible, make it as balanced and all that other stuff. And just sort of constantly consuming all the bits of media and whatnot of being a better dungeon master, it eventually arguably led me to being able to run combat in a very, very fun way, honestly being probably the best thing that I do run as a dungeon master, being combat. So I went from like sort of TPKing the party, because I don't know what CR is, to focusing on it, being kind of good at it, I think. So, go ahead.
Sorry, I was about to say I have something very similar to that, and that's a mistake I made. So this is when I was quite early as a DM, and this was an offline game, but it was a situation where there was like a dwarf king that was in charge of everyone, and he had a necklace on that controlled these iron golems, and that was how he maintained power because no one could defeat them or whatever. And the low intelligence and low wisdom fighter basically said to him, "Hey, I've got this magic spear here. It will control all other spears in the world or whatever. Trade me for your necklace." And I was like, "Okay, roll for persuasion." And this was a really railroaded campaign because I had like the whole story planned out. And the guy nat 20'd, and it was a critical success. And I had to, and in my head, I was like, "This isn't the plan. I can't have him take this thing." So I said no. And I said, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to have that happen." And the player's face dropped, and all the other players' faces dropped, and I thought, I've made it bad here. And that was the point, the turnaround, where I was like, "Hey, if I say a thing and they do it, I'm going to have to just roll with that and change the story as it goes." So that was, and I feel bad even telling that story because I know how that really impacted on the players' enjoyment, and they thought they were going to do something awesome, and I took it away. And I've never made that mistake again because that was like faux pas number 1 for me now.
I mean, it's a classic one. That one. Don't
Yeah.
let them roll for it unless you're perfectly okay with either outcome.
Right, exactly. And
They
I
want
was,
to say, can I persuade the person to give them the necklace? No.
yeah, exactly. You know, it was just a massive, rookie DM error, and I will never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
A mistake I've definitely made a few times, but I made it worst in the first ever thing I ran. Like, bad, but we all make mistakes in our first ever game we run, is having too many intricate secrets from the players. You want to have a veil there. You want to have your Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain. You do want to have some level of, magic for your players. But there came a point where there were 2 players. One didn't know who her dad was, and she was a half-elf, and there was another player who was an elf, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to secretly make them half-sisters." And they did not like it. And I was like, "Oh, well, I guess that's the way it is now." That game fell apart. I was bad DM. I put my hands up and say it. But that was because I twisted too much of their belief in their own characters into what I wanted their characters to be like. Similar thing just happened in my Rime of the Frost Maiden home game that both my siblings play in, and my sister really wanted to be the secret sibling of my brother. She really wanted to roleplay being my brother's secret sister, and I was like, "That's really cute. I love my siblings." Oh, set that up for them. And then when it got revealed, my brother was like, "I hate that," and I was like, "Okay, we're retconning it. Didn't happen. Don't worry about it." And I learned my lesson that I've learned my lesson that meddling too much, because Macca was saying earlier that creating a story based on your
Thank you
player's
for the
backstories
raid,
can
Nat
work really
30s.
well,
Thank
and
you
it
guys so
really
much.
can be so powerful and impactful, especially if a player needs closure or something like that. But if you meddle too much and you keep too many secrets and you twist the truth too much, it really can be confusing, complicated, and upsetting for your players. And that is why I like to bring in the Monster of the Week tip they keep for keepers. One of the first things on the keeper sheet, that's what you call a DM in Monster of the Week, is be honest with what the players would know. And then they give the example, if your players are hunting werewolves and you've made your werewolves not vulnerable to silver, and your players spend an hour discussing where to get silver weapons, just cut them off and be like, "The werewolves are not vulnerable to silver, don't bother, you're on a wild goose chase." Like there is a level where I think a lot of DMs aren't honest with their players in a way they should be honest. They do a little bit too much secret meddling. And you want to keep secrets, you want to keep the magic alive, but having an open discourse with your players is important too. And I definitely think my big flaw as a DM is I was like, "Oh, I want to create twisted, complicated stories," when my players were just there to hit goblins and have a good time.
Yeah.
Don't make too many cool NPCs who you love to play and will talk forever as.
Oh man.
Because guess what? Players get bored too. And if you're spending your entire game going, "And now my favorite self-insert character is going to talk for 5 minutes," they're going to be there going, "Just, we don't care. This is just you talking. This is not a fun interaction. This is you showing off. That's not why we're here." Yeah. I still do it a little. I'm sorry, but
We have
still,
that
like,
one NPC. It's like, come on,
always.
please.
There's always one or two NPCs where I'm like, this is my baby. But there is a certain amount of I try and draw back on it quite heavily, that making sure there are random NPCs who are just there for 5 minutes and are designed to be there for 5 minutes, are still fleshed out, but are not like, you always get back to the same innkeeper, you always go back to the same shopkeeper, you always go back to the same yada, because sometimes those are wonderful relationships that are built out of player engagement, and then you can flesh them. And sometimes you've come in with, here's my new favorite character that you're all going to love, and everyone goes, get rid of them. And you don't want to because they're your baby. And
That's sometimes the best thing, though, isn't it? When they hate a character, you're like, you're my fun for the next few weeks.
No, but not hate like I love to hate this person.
yeah.
Not hate as in
Oh,
this
I
person,
see.
but just like, this person is just a waffling windbag, and they stop the story dead because you like to do their voice and do all the little mannerisms and stuff, and you're there for their fun. Your fun is giving them fun and enjoying interacting with them, not going, I've made this world and here's my self-insert character.
I get what you mean.
I used to do a lot, and I really had to pull back on, because
I
replaced playing with DMing, and then of course you have your player character that isn't a player character.
Yeah, no, what I thought you meant was a player you wanted them to like and they enjoyed not liking, but if they just don't interact with it at all, then then I get it, yeah.
That's it.
Likewise, I would say if you make a NPC that they like too much, do not let them into the party to help them, because you don't want to track that. You don't.
Give it to a player. Give it to a player. You want
to a
it
player.
there? It's yours now. Off you go.
Also, now you have to balance the encounters. Like one of the mistakes I made, it was like one of the characters had an archmage for a father, and eventually they showed up, and then they're like, "Oh, why don't you come along?" I was like, "Okay, sure, why not?" This is like way early on, and then like they just proceeded to completely kill every single encounter I threw at them. I'm just like, okay, now we're just okay.
And then you have my players where it's just like, sometimes they like a character so much they just straight up kill him, like Poldrip the Zealous. That was a thing.
For no reason sometimes. Like I have a person that offline played a goblin, and it was just a running joke that whenever people's backs were turned, there would be an NPC there that was helping them out, or they were doing a quest for, and he'd roll like a stealth check, and it would be super high, and everyone's passive perception was tiny, so they would turn around and this NPC would be dead, and the goblin's like, I don't know, and it would just happen all the time.
I don't know how he got there. That body was there the entire time.
Yeah. They keep dying for no reason.
Oh man.
I mean, it's part of heroic storytelling. Obi-Wan has to die. Gandalf has to die. Like it's if you've got superpower MCs with the party, kill them. Kill them.
The problem is, I make NPCs I really like, and then my players really like them, and then I'm running a horror game, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to kill the baby to make my players feel things. I don't want to kill the baby.
But that's really good, because then the players are there going, don't kill the baby. Don't kill the baby. You're there going, but I control the world. And that's the joy of that. I love that. When you get to the point where you...
wizard? Oh no, she's really ill. She's got real poorly. Oh, I don't know if she's gonna make it through.
I will do anything to save them.
Exactly. Then you have them generating plot purpose, which is gorgeous. When they do it themselves, stories about themselves. Easy.
Oh goodness. That's it. Anybody wanted to add anything else to that sort of thing?
This wasn't on the mistakes topic, but it's because we were talking a lot about self-inserts, and because Carney has mentioned loving lore as well. I love dropping lore in that my players don't know is lore, because my players, like, I think maybe one or two of them have been on the Forgotten Realms wiki once or twice, and I currently am playing a game set in Sword Coast, and so I just chuck like cool stuff from the Forgotten Realms in, and they meet them and they're like, yeah, I guess, and I'm like, that is one of the most famous frost giants ever, and you don't know, but I love that you don't know. I love that I know and you have no idea, and I really enjoy that. That is such a pleasure to do as a DM, and I can recommend it totally, is like sprinkling stuff in that players have no idea is cool.
The moment, one of my favorite things that's ever happened is home game to other game environment. Of course, we all play games of Forgotten Realms because it's such an easy access point and all the books are there. Yeah. I was running a Forgotten Realms, I was running Dragon Heist, and of course they finished the heist and went, this is fun. I went, cool, we'll keep playing. And they've now done things all down the Sword Coast. And a player came to me the other day and went, I thought that this NPC was like this because that's how you DM them. But I've just read the books and they're nothing like that. Yep. But this is all canon. Yep. Which parts of it are not canon? I don't know. Some of them I couldn't tell you. And the way that players react by going, "But I thought it was all canon," is just absolutely adorable.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
I have one player that's really, really into D&D lore, and that's actually our DM for Mondays. And every now and again, I'll chuck some D&D lore in just so they go, "Yay! I know the thing." But I actually made my character on the Monday stream because I play in that Monday stream. I made their backstory be all to do with Kellenvor, one of the gods, just because I knew that Johnny the DM would have so much fun DMing for me with all this lore and stuff. And so yeah, most of them have no clue. But when one person does, I'm like, okay, now I've got to learn it all, and that's fine.
Yeah. Oh man. That said, alrighty. Last sort of thing. Let me move on to this sort of thing. So, this is a interesting sort of topic and whatnot. I definitely have a weirder sort of perspective. Do you have? But the main topic being that of prep or prepping as a game master and all that stuff. So, like, what do you guys sort of do now? I have a quick question for all of you. Do you run or multiple games at all, or only just one?
Yes.
Multiple games. I guess
5 or
we can
6
go down the
games.
list. How many games do you run?
Home and streamed at the moment.
Yeah.
5 or 6, 7,
Oh my goodness.
something like that.
Five or six. What about you, Prue and Chris?
I think I'm running 3 at the moment. Yeah, it soon to be 4.
Three at the moment, and then Chris. What about you, or Carney?
I usually do about 4, and then my offline game.
Then
Yeah, I DM for 1, but I'm playing in 4.
Living the life right there.
I'm called Macca the DM, but it's totally not that way anymore.
Oh my goodness. DAG 13. I thought, shoot, all right. I thought like running 4 was just like, oh man, guys, I'm so freaking tired and stressful. And everybody's just walking around saying, yeah, I run 8 games. Okay. But this is actually interesting, so I'll definitely be able to see from your perspective. So yeah, how do you guys sort of prep everything? I guess I prep for, and this kind of goes into sort of world building in of itself, but I prep for relevancy. So if it's relevant, I kind of can worry about improving everything else, like and all that stuff. But I prep the things that are relevant to the quote unquote main plot line if I'm running like a module or anything like that, or maybe even backstories. You know, it's relevant to the player characters because you know they care about them and all that stuff. Those are the sort of main things that I sort of focus on prepping for. But that said, what do you guys sort of focus on preparing?
I write 7 sentences, and I do that because when I used to be a pro wrestler, when we planned our
sick.
matches, we would have 7 points, right? Like the entrance, the lockup, the face fire, and so on and so on. And that's exactly what I do for D&D. I
WWE
write
fan.
7 main points, and then everything else in between is 100% improv. And even then, those main points, I can just throw them out the window if the players want to take it in a different direction. That's just my prompts if it starts to sort of lag. We don't necessarily just play D&D and stream it. We put on a show where it is all improv and no one really knows what's happening. It's not like it's pre-planned or anything. But I will change the pace if it's starting to lag, and I'll use my 7 sentences to have that happen.
Yeah, that is insane.
And that's it.
Also, I
Really
will say,
depends on.
Oh.
Sorry, go.
no, this is not really relevant, but you said pro wrestling and stuff like that. I'm like a huge WWE fan. I'm wearing a WWE shirt right now, Suplex
noticed.
City. But anyways, continue.
I think it depends on the forum. Like, if it's a live, it's not live, we record everything, but if it's a streamed game, I will prep extensively, usually for months in advance before we start recording, because I want to make sure that all my ducks are in a row. That can be as basic as, am I making stat blocks, am I making encounters, you know, all the sort of classic DM stuff, or it can be as like, hang on, this is the plot line that we're working towards, and I have no idea what the players will do. How can I flesh out these 4 or 5 bits of the world that excite me and draw them in those directions to make sure we have a cohesive 12-week arc. Like that's a long job, and I spend a lot of time on those. I have various different apps that I'll take notes on if I'm out and about, if I'm not at home, where I'll just write a note in it and then come back to it later and flesh that note out. Because I'll watch something, I'll hear something, I'll see something and go, yes, and just put it in. My home games, I have one that is relatively meticulously planned, and the players are big role players. So what will invariably happen is I'll plan something and it'll take them 3 months to do it. So that tends to be a sort of, I've planned this now, and I'll wait until they've done it, and it's going to take them a while because they're going to role play their way through a bunch of social encounters before it comes down to this whole setup that I've planned. I have another home game that is absolutely 100% entirely improvised because it was an experiment to see if that was doable, and it is, and it's great fun. And that one is very much I open D&D Beyond and the encounter tracker, depending on where they are. I think, what monsters do I know that live in that location, and fill it in while they're playing to set the encounter as they go. It really depends on the environment. I will say that every because I DM so much, every moment, every TV show I watch, everything, there is a little like, and it just happens automatically now. I don't even think about it. Like, I'm watching the new Marvel show. It's great fun. Therefore, I now have 4 or 5 different plot points based on, I will do anything to stop my partner being fridged to the point of destroying the entire universe. Spoilers. What if everyone was undead? Like, these are not clever. I'm aware they're not clever, but they are starting points. And then going, I've not done a zombie apocalypse world, which I really love as a genre, in fucking years. It's great fun. And there are tropes, and there are nice tick box tropes that we could do. Can I do that in a game sometime soon? Maybe.
I'm literally doing a zombie one in 4 weeks.
Yeah,
or 5 weeks because of that.
It was such a good episode, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like you'll have just constant list of new ideas, and will I adapt them? Will I not? Like, I'm currently planning for a show that I was going to do in January, but that got moved around because we're a production company, things change. So now I'm just spending more time planning that one for maybe next summer. I don't know, but that means it's going to have had 9 months prep, which is ridiculous to a certain extent, but also, I've got some really fun ideas that I really want to throw in, so we'll see.
That is awesome. Anybody else want to add anything?
I do a page per session usually. If it's a notebook, it's a notebook. If it's a Word document, it's a Word document. And the page will be story beats. I want them to hit, an NPC I want them to meet, that kind of thing, especially because I do those 2-hour games I was talking about. I'm like, these are what they're going to hit. The 2-hour game is a Rime of the Frost Maiden game. So my Rime of the Frost Maiden book, I write in my D&D books, I write in the margins and things, so that if the players are like, what were those 7 kobolds we met in chapter 1 called? Rather than looking through my own very messy notebook, I can flick back to the front page of Icewind Dale and be like, I called them Snoz and Snuzz and Dilbert and Crinkle and Bum and Tooth and Fang. There you go. 7 kobold names for you to have from me, from my improvised brain.
Can be serious characters, Prue.
Yeah.
Fang is very serious, thank you very much.
So I do something that Chris mentioned there, where you take notes and write notes at random inspiration points. I do the same thing, but with voice notes. And because I don't have the
God, I used to, but it got insane.
Right? Because I'll go through all my voice notes, and they'll be like, one where I'm just like pancakes, and I have no idea what that means or why I was interested in it.
So
at the time, I was like, that's important to him.
Wait, so explain, what are voice notes? Are they like what are voice notes exactly?
You just record yourself, like you press the voice recorder on your phone and then like say a bit and then it saves. And it's just because I don't have the dexterity to type, and I know that I'll forget what I need to type out. So I just say the thing in there, but then I have no context for it. So if I've forgotten the thing that inspired me to say that word, I'm just like, hey, I guess that word now.
This is why I use apps like Trello and Notion, because you can just immediately go, here is a one-liner, but it's already categorized to a certain super basic extent, and then from there you can start fleshing it out and putting it where it belongs.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brew.
And it's fine. I was just gonna say voice notes really help practicing like a monster voice you want to nail. Like I have voice notes with my friend like, I am Cryptidus. No, that's not what Cryptidus sounds like. And I try another one and another one and another one. until I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that's it, and then I can listen back. And it's also because I find it very impressive. This is a DM whose voices I find really impressive. Griffin McElroy from the Adventure Zone. He doesn't change his voice much, but you can tell which NPC is talking no matter what. And I don't know how he does that. He's very, very talented. And I find that very inspirational. So I'm like, oh, do I just talk slightly in the back of my mouth? Watch, like, trans voice training videos. They are so helpful for DMing, by the way.
Very true.
But, like, do I talk in the back of my throat for this character and slightly try push air through my nose? Do I put the tongue right to the front of my mouth? Like, it's tiny changes. Anyway, I got off track because we were talking about prep. The voice note is very helpful for practicing voices.
But no, please, this is really useful. Voice prep. I would argue that voice prep is incredibly useful because it's you can describe anything you want. The player's first engagement with an NPC, a monster, is going to be the voice. I spend so much time going, how guttural can I go? How much can I make something big and majestic sound big and majestic? So the moment they go, Jesus, okay, like, because that's their first way in.
Yeah, I've spoken to customers, like, in my day job, using a D&D voice just to practice it with real people. And people ring up and they're like, yeah, there was this Scottish guy I spoke to, and there's no one in my team that's Scottish. And I'm like, yeah, I nailed that dwarf.
Well, real quick, I want to make sure everybody gets their sort of say. Carney, did you have what was your sort of thing for DMing or DM prep help?
For prep, I would say for the homebrew games, I usually just have a whole document, like I use OneNote to show everything that's going on in the world, and then I'll have another tab for where the characters are at and what they're possibly going to do, and hopefully I've already planned for it, and if not, then I have, like, like those story beats that, okay, they're going to go this way all of a sudden, well, at least I could throw this person in here, he's around that area or something like that. So just kind of being generally prepared and trying to improv the rest. I'm really bad at pre-planning. I'm such a procrastinator, and then Magic the Gathering comes up, and I'm just like, okay, so it's just, yeah, I try to plan. I've actually found it harder, because now I'm doing a module again, to go back to a book, and it's really hard for me, because it's so linear, and I'm just like, what else is going on? And it's like, oh, nothing else is going on. This is what happens. I'm just like, okay.
I know what you mean. I can't run a book. I will go, we're going to run this book, my friends. This is the one we're running. I put it down. We start the first session. They're off piste. Who cares? Book's gone. Like, that's every single time, because books have to... Okay, most books. We can get into the qualities of different D&D books at another time, but most of the earlier adventures are more linear because of the way the hobby has changed. A lot of the newer adventures are less linear and therefore much more open to player shenanigan. Frostmaiden has its issues, but it opens with, here are 10 towns.
Yeah. I have learned that I cannot run a module. Every time I run a module, it goes all the way right or something. Like Tomb of Annihilation, for example. The way it first starts off, first 10 minutes of the game, you're supposed to be transported into the city, like just thrown in there. No, we had they hired a boat or something like that, and they just decided to sail to the island. First session, the boat blows up. Now they're stranded on an island for 5 sessions. That whole module gets thrown out. Then there's Rime of the Frostmaiden.
Everyone's still dying, right? Everyone who ever got resurrected is still dying, so it's still the main 8 but they're never getting that good.
And then Rime of the Frostmaiden. I'm like, all right, so we're going to run the Rime of the Frostmaiden module, but I'm going to change like 70% of it. They're like level 2. They're fighting like the storm bird, like giant mechanical bird from like Horizon Zero Dawn at level 2. It's nowhere near. They haven't heard of the 10 towns. What is a town? They don't know. They're lost in time or something. It's bad. I'm like, yeah.
I make a joke that when D&D does 6th edition, it's just going to be a piece of paper saying, "Fuck it, you figure it out," and that'll be it.
Oh man.
I can't pay Mike Mills to write that piece of paper, so I doubt it will be that.
Yeah, right.
Good.
I love running books. Sorry, everyone, to crash the party.
No. I'm just incapable of doing it.
Not that it's just there. I'm a procrastinator too. Guess what? Didn't do my prep. I'll read 3 pages of Rime of the Frostmaiden. I'll name some NPCs. Let's go. Takes me an hour. Whoosh, done. I love it. I really like running books. But I was also going to say for prep, there was a few more things I wanted to add, and it is just that I really like writing out what you would call like grey text or green text from a book. When I know my players are getting something cool, sit with yourself and do a bit of creative writing, and it's really helpful to be able to have that to read off, because you can feel really proud of yourself for like that amazing description you gave of Tiamat's lair, or the gross goblin cave they spent 10 days traveling to, or whatever you needed it for. It's really good to have a written description of something. As we all know, I'm running around with the Frost Maiden. I'm running out of words to describe snow. We're half a year in, and I'm like, it's dark, it's snowy,
Cold.
same shit, different day, gang. You hate it. I think you probably want to kill Oral by now, right? Come on now.
Do the A plot. Come on, do the A plot.
But yeah, I find writing, if you have a big scene coming up, do prep descriptions, do prep things people are gonna, if big bads are gonna have speeches and monologues.
Yeah.
Prep it, because it's really helpful, make you feel really good when you get that off, because your players will be so impressed, and like it feels well nice. And I also have the Monsters Know What They're Doing book by Keith, a man.
Oh, incredible.
So good. It's a book that tells you how to play the stat blocks of monsters. I nearly outright killed a player with 2 Peritons, which are CR2 monsters, when they were level 5, just by following the guide in that book. I made my hags amazing. I love running hags. That book is so helpful for, this is a stat block, but how do you play it tactically? And it, he's done all the tactics for you, and it's great.
Yeah.
One step further with the prep of creative writing, practice how you're going to say it, perform it for yourself. Put on some really epic music so that you get into the headspace of what you're about to say, and then try and replicate that when you're doing it to your players. It'll never be as good. Of course it won't. But the ability to go, like, I had a whole bit at the end of a campaign where for some reason I was in Germany. I am German, but I wasn't home. It was a different thing. I think I was working on a play. I can't remember. But I had the God of War new edition, new game version, not the old one, soundtrack. And I went, this is the soundtrack for the end of this campaign when we come back to it. I'm never going to play it to them. This is the soundtrack for how I'm going to deliver the end of this, because this is the feeling. Yep. And it meant that those descriptions, those moments very much had that kind of epic quality to them. Yeah. Practice what you're going to say.
On the music side of things as well, prepping music is one of my favorites. I'm a big music fan. I listen to lots of different music. There's a lot of musicians that I listen to that I'm like, that should be an NPC. Bjork is an NPC in my world. Why not? She's basically an elf. Chuck her in. She's a
Freddie
fake
Mercury's
creature.
been in mine.
But prepping with music's really fun. Like finding that song from that movie soundtrack that made you cry and you couldn't explain why. Finding it, putting it on during someone's death scene. Ooh, music is so emotive. Prep music, and you're like so good. And if you're a streamer, there's plenty of like free source, really great music out there that you can put on your stream as well. But if you aren't streaming and you are just playing at home where you know copyright isn't a problem, the music from Sunshine by Danny Boyle is the one I always go. Very good, makes me cry, makes my players cry. Not that's the intention. Sometimes though, it's a little catharsis. It's a treat.
Yeah.
100%. That's my only hydration. It's just like players' tears.
Oh man.
It isn't. Of course, it isn't.
Real quick, there was actually a question in chat, and then we'll go into the sort of open forum before we wrap up. I'm going to butcher your name, so I'm just going to spell it out, so I do not have to worry about butchering it. Pyctsi. They have a question.
That's Pitsy.
Hey.
There you go.
Hey.
They have a question saying, has there been anything you've done randomly that you found you start relying on more because it really works?
Yes.
Go for it. All right.
I've spoken.
Prue or Chris, one or the other.
This is something I did recently, and I do it a lot, and it's really fun. If your players want to sell something, honestly, gold doesn't have much value in D&D, let's be honest. So, invent a weird shop. I did it last session. I've done it quite a lot. My player was like, I picked up loads of soap and manacles in the last dungeon. I was like, whoa, you're walking past Scrimby's soap and manacles shop. How strange. You just do that. It's so helpful, and I rely on it all the time now because I can't be bothered inventory tracking. My players can't be bothered. I don't care about tracking their gold. I have a player who wants to be really rich, so I'm like, yeah, take everything from the dungeon. I'll make a random shop for you, you sell it. Boosh. I can't be bothered with shopping unless I've come up with a really, really, really cool shopkeeper, and even then my players are like, I don't care about shopping, crew. I don't want to meet your cool shopkeeper. So definitely a random thing I tried was just being like, pick whatever you want off a list. If you can afford it, you can have it. There's a random shop over here that perfectly suits your needs. Do it. Really helpful. Really quick way to progress your story without boring players with inventory management.
True. Scrimby, soap, and manacles. What the hell does Scrimby sound like?
Oh, the goblin sounds like this, and she had a tattoo of Girl Boss on her wrist. She had Girl Boss tattooed on her wrist. I loved her. She was great.
Who needs soap and manacles?
Yeah.
People trying to get out of manacles.
I guess so.
My manacles are filthy.
She would have a
man.
manacle chain hung on a wall, and then one bar of soap on one individual shelf, and then another manacle chain. That's how the whole shop was laid out.
She's so stylish.
In my head,
She's psychotic.
that's the front for a whole gangster organisation right there. Like, it's a legitimate shop. What do you mean, officer?
Oh my goodness. That's
So, if I may, one of the things that I lean on, whenever my players find something in a dungeon or whatever, even if it's just a mundane item, because they love looting, and whatever they loot, it's either possessed by a demon of some kind that then is now their patron, or there's NPCs that want that thing. So they'll just be walking through town and someone will come up and be like, have you seen this sword? And they describe it, and it's exactly what one of the players has. And even if it doesn't mean anything at that point, they now want it, and the players will just go, I have power. And it's just so much fun to just run with that.
Yeah. Oh boy.
But I lean on it too much.
One thing that I kind of do, or I did recently, was whenever like players are trying to like sort of strategize, they're trying to like figure out like a sort of mystery and whatnot, but kind of just sort of, instead of saying, all right, this is what we kind of have prepared, I'm gonna just sit back. I'm just gonna just listen to exactly what they're saying, because well, oftentimes than not, they may end up coming up with a theory or story that's like 10 times better than what you came up with. So I'm like, we can change that around, because the players love feeling right. Like, they love feeling right and figuring things out for themselves. So that's been a huge thing that I do for like role building or them just mysteries and all that stuff.
Stop worrying about how well lit the dungeon is. Just stop. Like, who's got dark vision? Who doesn't have dark vision? Who's got light? Who's got a torch? Who's got blah, blah? No one gives a shit. Let them see. And if you really want to play with, ooh, it's dark in the dungeon, put in some magical darkness. The game is where some species have dark vision and some don't, and apparently it's really valuable, but it isn't. Just move on from it. Find other ways around it. I used to get really like, hang on, who's got dark vision? And it always became the three of us do, but the two of us don't. Okay, so how do we work out this mess? And as a DM, I found myself going, this is just stupid. This is boring. None of us are having fun. We're all going, I'll check my racial proficiencies. 1 second, please. Oh, God. Move on with your life.
Also, because the question was like, what's something you've done randomly that you now use all the time? So many DMs forget about inspiration, and it's a big joke, like no one uses inspiration. I use it all the time. My players forget to use it, but I use it all the time for those moments where the players have done something super cool, but they failed the roll. And I'm like, but that was sick. Have an inspiration. And I remember I very randomly one time was like, that's so cool. I don't know what I can reward you with. Oh, wait, I can reward you with inspiration. And I'll do it all the time. And it makes players feel good. They get a free reroll off you. Bish, bash, bosh. Chuck inspiration at people when they do rule of cool stuff that doesn't pop off.
The fact that you're using doesn't pop off is awesome, because I get really stuck with inspiration. I very rarely, if ever, give it, because I don't want one player to feel like their rule of cool thing was cool and someone else's rule of cool thing, and it creates a hierarchy I don't want. But if you tried to do something and you rolled a 1, you get an inspiration because it's kind of a booby prize. It's kind of it didn't go off, but you had a cool idea. Here's a D20 off you can do.
Yeah.
I can
And
see
I
that.
take both roles too. I have them calamitously fail something, but somehow luckily achieve it, you know? So I sort of play on both roles.
It's nice.
Real quick, I want to make sure everybody gets the thing. Carney, if you want to say your thing.
About which one? About inspiration or the other one?
About oh goodness. Just basically answering the question of
the
what's
random thing,
something
right? The
random.
random one.
Yeah, the random thing you've done.
Well, I was gonna hop onto the inspiration thing first, and I'll just
Go
say
for
like I'm really bad with that as well. And it's kind of like what Chris was saying. I don't want to favor somebody because sometimes you forget. So somebody else did something really cool. You're so in the moment, you're just like, wow, and then you forget to give inspiration, and it's like, hold on, your thing was actually really cool. So luckily, streaming, we've been able to build it into chat. So chat provides inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the random thing, I think taking something that players, or rather their characters, like they get obsessed about in game, and rolling with it, kind of like, oh well, I had something else planned, but actually this could also lead to something that they're looking for, or some answers that they need, and just being on kind of on in the moment, just turning something that was mundane at first into something that actually impacts the story or something, maybe even their backstories. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
100%. That said, I don't want to keep you guys too long, because I made a promise to all of your sort of time and all that stuff. So if we want to, we can go into just sort of probably like just lasting sort of thoughts or final remarks and all that stuff. And then, hey, so yeah, maybe just one final tip, and then also where we could find you guys in the future.
I've got one, right? This is one I love telling people. This is the best homebrew item I ever made. So it was my crew were kind of searching a mad professor's lab, and they discovered a golden box, and inside the golden box was a gilded golden blade with gems on the handle and a single piece of paper underneath the blade that said Luck Blade. And they were like, "Oh my god, wow, we found a Luck Blade! I can't believe this!" And the guy that was always the first to pick stuff up picked it up and unsheathed it immediately, and then D100 ducks just swarmed around him. And when they investigated the note, the ink had ran out, and it actually said Duck Blade. And so that was that made a whole town's economy from just farming ducks, because they kept going ja 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 ja, just like thousands of ducks were just spawning, and it was so much fun. So that's a free item you guys can have, the Duck Blade.
All right, I'm adding that to my game.
I run serious games for serious people, you ass.
Yeah, that was loads of fun. I also had a cannon that fired weasels, but that was it.
Oh man. Oh, and also, Macca, where can we find you at?
Oh yeah, that's the important stuff. So yeah, check twitch.tv/CheckDsOut on Mondays and Tuesdays at 9 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. PST and 4 p.m. EST. And soon we'll be doing, I think, Fridays for definite, and I'm not sure what else other day. We haven't planned that far ahead, but it's coming very soon. And you can find me personally on Twitter at Macca_the_DM.
Actually, hey mods, can you drop their links into the chat, please, for everybody? Thank you, guys. All right, and who is next?
I can go. I have a lot of other tips. I would happily, if you're a new DM and you just want more like talk tips for hours, I can. But this is the one I will give as my final one for the evening. Is try and be really sensitive to what your individual players like. It's something I knew kind of inherently as I picked up more and more DMing, as I learned more and more about it. But it's something that's specifically written into the Cyberpunk Red core rulebook, which is basically if you don't finish a quest, if you fulfill the kind of player you are in that game, if you're a player who loves roleplay and you've roleplayed a lot in the session, you get XP. Chat. If you're a player who loves combat and you did a cool combat, you get XP. And it made me really think about the types of player there are. There's a list in the Dungeon Master's Guide of different types of player as well. Be really sensitive to that and your game will go like swimmingly, because I have people who love combat. So I make sure that when they're building their character, I ensure their character is going to be able to hit really well. And then their character does hit well, and that player comes away from my table smiling that they got that crit. And then I have other players who love roleplay at the same table. And so that player is the one who, at the pub, I make sure the little kid comes over and is like, "Excuse me, can I have a bowl of soup, please?" And then there's the person who like just loves quizzes and puzzles and lore. And so you build a beautiful and you as you get better at DMing, you'll learn how to interlock all those things together so it becomes a smooth flow and it doesn't feel like you're singling out each player. But be really sensitive to what they like out of character and makes them smile and light up. and your games will just fly by because you're all there to have fun. The DM's there to have fun too. And if you can curate the best fun for them, that'll make your world as well. You'll be so happy. So that's my big tip. Be really intuitive to your players' needs. Yeah, I guess I should do sign off now. Awkward transition to that one, but I'm Prue. I'm Proopypants everywhere online. You can find me on Twitter and on Twitch, but I don't do much interacting on my personal accounts. Much more likely to find me at Chasing Tales role-playing games, which is ChasingTalesRPG everywhere online. Where we play Dungeons and Dragons on a Thursday evening UK time. We have a Sunday afternoon show where we play variety TTRPGs, often one-pagers, things like Lasers and Feelings or Honey Heist, if you've heard of those. And we have a new show in the works where we'll be playing mini arcs, the kind of self-contained 8 to 12 week things that you can hop in and hop out of, across different systems, across different games. There'll be some D&D, might have some Vampire the Masquerade coming up. We got all sorts of fun things. So yeah, come over and say hi to us. We're nice, we're queer, we're silly. Everyone else is very good role playing over there. They're very good role players.
Amazing role players in that group, 100%.
So yeah, if you're interested in that, feel free to come check us out. You're welcome over anytime. That's me.
Awesome. Between the two Chris's.
Go for it.
I'm still formulating if you've got one.
You're still formulating? Okay. Me too. But I'll go with this. I'll just say that as a DM, I think a lot of the time, especially with new players, they fall into this trap of like only talking to the DM or just like having these very long conversations or trying to figure out their own backstory or trying to figure out information about what's going on. Try and find a way to encourage the players to interact with each other more, or bring them in at least to the conversation and not just have it one-on-one, and have them also try and bring more people into it. It really creates more of an environment when everybody can participate at the same time, even if it is something that one player likes more than others. Like Prue was saying about like having like somebody that really likes puzzles, have somebody be able to try and role play that, or like, you know what I mean? Like the person that's trying to figure it out, they can bounce off ideas or something. Just try and get everybody involved at the same time. And if it does come down to like a one-on-one kind of thing, like just try and make that rare and try to make it more impactful, move the story along instead of just having useless information or it's like silly role play for no reason. Like if it's just that, then have everybody in on it. And that's kind of it for me. Like I like having everybody in on the story and moving it forward and just equal opportunity to shine. So.
100%. That said, and where can we find you at?
Hey, you can find us at Carnisideshow, just twitch.tv, Carnisideshow, and everywhere else, Carnisideshow. So.
Awesome. And then bring us home, Chris.
Within the context of safety tools, safe play, making sure your players are comfortable and happy, that is incredibly important. And once you've hit that baseline, everything else is open to you. It was something that I needed to have beaten into my head when I was starting out DMing. You can do anything. You can do literally anything. You could literally rip off a movie that you love and do it tomorrow, and people will still love to watch it and play it. You don't know what people are going to like, and you don't know what people are going to dislike, and chances are they just want to be there and have fun. You have so much scope to push the boat out, do things that no one else is doing, because you're making a movie for your friends where they get to be cool, and they'll have different ways that they want to be cool. But if you work out what their cool is, you can do whatever you want. And the rules, we've said this before, the rules are there to help structure the world. They're guidelines, and you have the freedom within that to be completely off the wall. I ran a combat in a live show where it was a beholder whose central eye could do time magic, and they had to run the same combat from the beginning and from the end and try and make it meet in the middle. It was insane. We had one DM running it forwards, one DM running it backwards at the same time, and their job was to make the timelines match up. If they didn't, there'd be consequences.
Man.
It was incredibly complicated and difficult to work out. We spent 3 hours talking basically quantum mechanics in a pub in Edinburgh, planning this thing, and we did it, and it worked, and it was great. Because we had the balls to and thought, here's an opportunity. You're a DM. The world is your choice. Throw it all in. Do the silly thing. Do it over the top thing. Push it. You have the opportunity to. The envelope is yours to do so too. Safely.
Well said, well said. And also, where can we find you at?
Well, I'm Chris. I'm the head of production at Roll Together. Sometimes I DM. There's a lot of other fantastic DMs on the channel, so don't expect to see me in the DM's chair. I'm also playing right now, which is nice, so, you know. I might kobold druid. But yeah,
Love Gertie.
Oh, it's one of those voices. But yeah, you can watch us on Mondays and Tuesdays, 6 p.m. British summer time, or GMT when it becomes that again, sometime in October, I think. We stream 6 till 9, so 3 hours. Normally they're part of arcs 4, 8, 12. We have Idle Champions codes, we have Warriors of Waterdeep Gems codes. We're doing a Warriors of Waterdeep themed actual play in a couple of weeks. Yeah, come and watch some D&D and have fun. And on Saturdays we have a talk show, which is great. So yes.
And you can actually find all of us at
Yeah,
twitch.tv/teams/rolling together.
Yep,
did the job for
that's
me.
the team. That's all of us. Every single one in this is part of the team, which Macca basically runs and organizes because I don't understand it. So that's good.
Oh man. That said, oh my goodness. You all have been fantastic guests, and I appreciate each and every single one of you. You guys are freaking amazing. Much love, much love. That said, we're going to break down the stream and everything, and we will continue off in a minute. But thank you guys for everybody who decided to tune in. You are fantastic individuals, and I will see you in just a bit. Bye, guys.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right, let's switch